I'm Dave Hodgin. I'm the president of the Scotts Valley Senior Life Association. SVSLA, SVSLA, that's a mouthful, has been around for 10 years here in Scotts Valley, working on issues to enhance the healthy living and happiness of seniors in our community. We work strictly just in Scotts Valley. SVSLA is a non-profit 501c3, so any donations that are made, is that coming through? Oh, very good. Okay. So any donations that are made are tax deductible. The organization has no paid staff. It has no paid office. Everything is on a volunteer basis, so contributions that are made to the organization all go to help seniors in the community. So if you're so inclined, there are envelopes in the back like this, and we'd be very happy to get your donation. All our events are free like this, and we also do other things in the community, like provide defibrillator units for some of the parks around the community, such as Spring Lakes, Mono Valley, etc. Here in the Senior Center, we provided umbrellas for the backyard here because they wanted to have outdoor events and have a more pleasant spot for people to sit and enjoy the outdoor events. And so those were donated. So that's the kind of thing that our organization does. There are some brochures out there. All I could find were old ones, but at least it will give you some idea about the organization if you are so inclined. There are business cards. We have a wonderful website that Maxine McCarthy is the webmaster for, and it has some good information on it. Contact for that is on this business card, so if you want, pick up a card in the back and take a look at the website. Lots of good information. At the end of today, we would like everyone to take one of these yellow sheets of paper, orange. I guess that's orange, isn't it? Yeah. Okay. I like orange. Anyway, we would love for you to fill that out so we have a way of judging how successful the event was in your eyes, which may be different from how well we think. Also, on your seat, there are 3x5 cards, and there'll be opportunity to stand up and ask questions if you wish. You also can just fill out a card and hand that toward the center, and we'll get a volunteer to come by and pick them up and ask our panelists to answer your questions as best they can. Okay, just to define a few terms so we're all on the same page. Alternative and complementary medicine. Alternative medicine is a non-mainstream practice used in place of conventional medicine. 30% of adults in the USA use alternative medicine as a complement to conventional medical care. 5% use alternative medicine solely. Integrative medicine brings conventional and complementary approaches together, emphasizing a holistic, patient-focused approach to healthcare and wellness. Now, how popular are these items? This way of dealing with health issues. Americans spent $30 billion in 2012 for complementary medicine treatments. 59 million Americans paid for complementary treatment in 2012 for an average of $500 per person. Amounts on complementary health approaches increased significantly as family income increased and its use varies around the country, depending on the region. And why do they use alternative medicine? Well, 55% of adults in the USA use alternative medicine because they believe it would help when combined with conventional medical treatments. 28% because they believe conventional medical treatments would not help with their health problem. 26% because a conventional medical professional suggested they try it. 13% because they feel conventional medicine is too expensive. So that's just some background information. Our procedure today is that each speaker is going to have 15 minutes on their topic. We'll have 5 minutes of question and answer after each speaker. And at the end of all the speakers, we will have a 20-minute question and answer session so that there should be plenty of time for you to ask questions of things that concerns you. Let's see. Oh, a couple of other items. Natural products, dietary supplements such as herbs, botanicals, vitamins and minerals, probiotics. I realized I'm taking one of these things because I use fish oil on a regular basis. And that's included in this category. 18% of American adults use dietary supplement in 2011, and fish oil is the most common. 3 of today's panelists will discuss a type of natural product. The other is mind and body practices, taught by a trained practitioner or teacher, e.g. acupuncture, yoga, chiropractic, osteopathic manipulation, meditation, and relaxation techniques. There was a significant increase in most mind and body practice between 2002 and 2012, which was the most recent figures that we can come up with. 2 of today's panelists will discuss a type of mind and body practice. I'd like to move right on, and if you have any questions when it comes to Q&A, I think it would be very helpful if you would either come up to the microphone or ask one of the assistants here to ask you a question for you, so that everyone can hear what it is you're asking. First panelist today is Dr. Tierra. Dr. Tierra, someone was kidding earlier today about how sharp the memory was. That wasn't me. So I'm using a cheat sheet here. Apologies to all. Dr. Michael Tierra, OD, is a California state licensed acupuncturist and herbalist. He's one of the pioneers of herbal medicine and acupuncture with 40 years of experience. He has authored 9 books on herbal medicine and related healing topics, including the best-selling Way of Herbs, and with his wife is the author of East-West Course in Planetary Herbology, with well over 10,000 students worldwide. He was one of the first local acupuncturists who opened his clinic here in 1978. He and his wife, Leslie Tierra, continue to see patients part-time at their clinic in downtown Santa Cruz, 912 Locust Street. Michael and his wife also direct the East-West Natural Healing Clinic, held at Mountain Community Resource Center on Highway 9. They do that 2nd and 4th Saturdays morning each month, beginning at 10 a.m. and running to 1 p.m. They're assisted by a large cadre of their colleagues, graduate or advanced students, and they offer free health consultations with free herbal supplements donated by industry, massage therapy, and acupuncture. They also offer special pain-free needle acupuncture. Pain-free sounds good to me. This is offered free of charge or by donation. So you can call 335-6600 for an appointment. And I believe there's literature in the back there that you can pick up. And they say walk-ins are welcome. Ladies and gentlemen, it's been a great pleasure to introduce Dr. Michael Tierra.
Good afternoon, everyone.
Hi, good afternoon.
I am hoping that you all have one of these. They're on the back table. Can you pass them around for them? This is just a little flyer that I have in my clinic to introduce people to the concept of what acupuncture is about. There's one word that I think is really important for everybody to recognize. It certainly is the foundation of acupuncture, and that's the word chi. Anybody not hear of the word chi? Q-I. Good. Things are getting around now. Chi, of course, represents energy, and it's the energy of the universe. All the ways that energy represents itself in the universe. But the way it represents itself in the human body is a very specific method, and it's basically through the nervous system. So it would be a bit of a simplification to describe chi as being biological nervous energy. And there are two major circulatory systems in the body. One the West has known about is blood circulation. And everybody here knows about blood circulation, probably is trying to deal with improving it. We always need to improve our blood circulation, especially as we get older. But the one channels of circulation which the West, up until, I don't know if they did actually acknowledge it even until now, has never recognized, is that just as there are blood circulation in the body, and it's well known and well charted through the veins and arteries and so forth, there's also the circulation of chi. Now, blood and chi, the movement, are both reciprocal to each other. In other words, you can't move blood without chi, and you can't have chi without blood. So, as the Chinese say, blood is the mother of chi, and chi is the father, the commander of blood. So you need to do both. And if you do one, generally you're helping the other, not always. Acupuncture is basically, an acupuncture doctor is basically a chi doctor. In the sense that what we do is find different methods, different ways of moving chi through the body. Any disease, any pain, any problem that you have in your body is due to a blockage of chi and or blood. I'm going to repeat that because it's really important for a concept that a lot of people don't understand. Why, when you have pain, you go and grab it and want to rub it? You want to get something moving out of there, so circulation. It's just an instinctive reaction. So anytime you have a disorder in the body, something is not circulating properly. And that's why methods like Tai Chi and so forth are all beneficial to keep everything moving. Movement is the essence of life. Now, the Chinese figured out, and actually not just the Chinese, many cultures throughout the world, the concept that you can press or manipulate points throughout the body that would actually specifically move energy from one place to the next. And the Chinese have it perhaps the most elucidated, the most thoroughly described, with over 365 acupuncture points on the body, and more coming all the time. So basically, the most common method of stimulating the movement of chi is to put a very small stimulus, and it could be a needle, it could be a magnet, it could be an herb, or something that creates a mild kind of stimulation on a particular area of the body that gets energy to move from other parts of the body through that area and freeing up blockages, relieving pain, and so forth. It's quite astounding. The reason why I can continue to do it is that it's always, to me, amazing. When you go to a Western medical doctor to relieve pain, the first thing that they give you are pain relievers, painkillers. They don't treat the cause of pain. The cause of pain, as I said before, is blockage. So if you relieve the cause of pain just about as quickly, or even faster many times, the pain is relieved than if you were to take a painkiller which is rife with all sorts of different adverse effects. So that's basically how acupuncture works. One of the other things about acupuncture that you're going to encounter is that we recognize basically 12 basic organ systems. Now, Western physiology might acknowledge, and indeed there are more systems in the body than just 12. But if 12 is all that's needed to do the job, why have more? So if an acupuncturist tells you, for instance, and this is going to be true of most people, especially as we get older, that your kidney chi is low. Is he actually just talking about your organ of the kidney? No, he's not. He's talking also about your entire hormonal system. He's talking about the adrenal glands, which regulate the hormonal system. So that when he takes your pulse or does an evaluation and says your kidney chi is low, and that can give rise to all sorts of different metabolic diseases, including arthritis and cancer and all kinds of serious diseases when kidney chi is low. Back pain is one of the most common indications of kidney chi deficiency. So how many people here got back pain? How many? I should say how many people don't have back pain?
I'm only 6.
Okay. So in other words, if you told me that you had back pain, my mind says kidney chi. And so then I'm going to think about how am I going to relieve your back pain? A chiropractor might make an adjustment on the spine. Well, the adjustment on the spine sometimes works. You might say, well, my back is out of adjustment. But what is actually happening is not the cracking that's going on, but all the nerves of the body connect to the spine. The spine is like the central freeway. And all the nerves connect to that. So when you make that little stimulation on particular points of your body, especially in your lower back, you're increasing the circulation. The shortcut to that is that it requires frequent visits, oftentimes to affect a complete cure. And one of the myths is that it's caused by your spine being out of alignment. Usually your spine is not out of alignment. It's just a blockage of chi that's happening somewhere. So I would put acupuncture points in different parts of your body, and one of the most common places that I go for is right behind your knee, right in the center behind your knee. It opens up the whole channel of the spine and relieves back pain beautifully in most cases. And then I might find points that are similar to what acupuncturists might use along both sides of the spine. Now, if I feel like you're weaker and the problem is more intractable, I might decide that these tiny, I mean, they're almost the size of a hair. Acupuncture needles are not providing the sufficient type of stimulus to actually make a cure happen. I might add heat to that, and that's called moxibustion. Moxibustion is burning a nerve. It's usually in the form of a cigar, and you light it up. It smells a little bit like cannabis in its raw form. So it was always kind of a joke whenever my dentist had his office next to my acupuncture clinic. He's smelling these moss coming out the windows. And years ago, he used to joke with me about it. Nowadays, it's all accepted. So you smell cannabis everywhere. But in those days, it was a point of suspicion. And so I said, no, there's no cannabis here, just moxa. So we hold the cigar, and you can imagine the cigar, we hold it next to the point. And we repeat that and then tell the patient, say, hot. As soon as it's hot, I take it away. Repeat that 5, 6, 7, 8 times, 10 times. And that would create a greater intensification of the treatment. What moxa does is miraculous. It doesn't only add heat, but it causes the vessels and to dilate, so there's more blood circulation going on, so there's more heat happening. The names of the organs, which are listed here in your flyer, I'm not going to go through all of them, are not necessarily only the physiological organ that's known in Western physiology and medicine. It refers to whole terrains. If you can imagine, you have a kidney energy everywhere in your body. You have lung energy, which is the use of oxygen, the intake of oxygen, and every cell of your body is doing that. You have stomach and digestive energy in every part of your body. So when an acupuncture talks about a particular organ, don't mistake it that it only means that organ. It means the whole function, the whole terrain in which that organ represents. So that's something that's a different and a new concept that perhaps a lot of people don't understand. So how does chi get disrupted? How does chi get blocked? Well, all the usual ways that you can imagine. Anytime we put ourselves through either internal stress, mental stress, injuries, all those things can cause chi to be blocked. The mind can cause chi to be blocked. Why the mind? Because this is a central nervous system. All the nerves of the body relate to the central nervous system. So in conclusion, I want to say that also that acupuncture is not the only methodology that you would find in a clinic. For instance, lately I've been using a lot of seeds that I put on a little tape and put in the ear, and I had people massage them to correspond to different parts of the body. I also use hand therapy, Korean hand acupuncture hand therapy, where I don't use needles, but I can put magnets and little pellets on those points, and usually the pain is gone within minutes, seconds sometimes. What I normally do is I have a person, when they come to me and they say, I have a pain in my shoulder. Okay, challenge your shoulder. Tell me how bad the pain is on a scale of 1 to 10, 10 being the worst. They say, oh, it's an 8. Okay, that's good. Now I'll treat it. So I'll look around on a particular part of their hand. Usually it's the ring finger or the second finger, corresponds to the arm, and the shoulder would be in this area up here. And I'll look around, I'll probe, and lo and behold, I'll find an extremely tender spot on your hand, because the hand has the most nerves connecting to the brain. And so it's a direct relationship between your hand and your brain. And I'll palpate it. I'll poke at it. I might use a fountain pen. Or sometimes if I don't have anything, I have some keys in my pocket. Point of a key, and I'll just kind of rub it a little bit. That's not terribly painful to experience that. And I said, now chest it out. If the pain's not gone completely, it's gone at least 50% or more immediately. I says, oh, now I know I got the right point. Because if I was just a little bit off one way or the other, it would not work. There's no pain. So that's basically manipulating chi without needles. So as in my practice, I don't only need needles to treat people. So I wanted to just introduce you to acupuncture and the concept of being a chi doctor. And I hope that this will be sufficient to get you thinking about it. My cards are at the back in case you're interested. I have occasionally, I see patients even at this point in my life. I'm going to be turning 80 in May. So I don't intend to retire because I happen to be in love with the whole process too much. All right, thank you very much.
First, if you have any questions regarding acupuncture, here's an opportunity to ask Dr. Tierra directly. Any questions about acupuncture? Yes, sir.
One of the meridians is pericardium and triple warmer. Would you characterize what a triple warmer is?
Yes, the triple warmer is an imaginary organ. The triple warmer is an imaginary organ. In other words, it's not a specific place in the body, but it's a function. It's a function. The function is how does all the parts of your upper body, the middle body, and the lower body, how do they interrelate? So people can have a maladjustment of their triple warmer, so to speak. But it's a very, even in Chinese medical circles, it's kind of like a questionable concept. Pericardium basically is an extension of the heart.
Can you all hold the microphone a little bit closer?
Yes, sir.
Acupuncture treatment covered by health insurance policies or Medicare?
I couldn't hear the question. Did you?
Acupuncture covered by insurance and Medicare? Yes, it is, and at least in most cases, it should be. You should be demanding it. I don't specifically take it in my clinic. What I do is I give you the necessary documents you need to apply to your own insurance company, because there's a lot of red tape that I can't deal with at this point in my clinic. And you do it if you get reimbursed.
Very good. Yes.
What's the fundamental difference between acupuncture and acupressure?
She answered it. Heals.
In what it does.
Heals. They both do the same thing.
Oh, okay.
But acupressure is much milder in its result.
Is that Polarity Therapy?
Yes. When you're dealing with chi, you're dealing with something that's like between matter and spirit, aren't you? So it's very easy to go off the deep end or off the far end. And so yes, polarity therapy is beautiful. And basically you're touching and holding different points of the body, and it's very relaxing, and chi can be regulated that way.
Question about
Another question here.
she and me. Western medicine has borrowed from acupuncture by use of tincture. Can you explain how that might work? Is that something you would recommend or recognize?
TENS unit is electrical stimulation applied to different areas of the body that we need to name. TENS is basically, I also use electricity in my acupuncture practice, where I'll connect electrodes to needles. I do that for pain that's particularly stubborn and difficult to get rid of. I had a patient with serious chronic shoulder pain. I tried all my normal methods, and nothing would give her except just temporary relief, until I connected electric acupuncture with the needles on her arm. And then what's going on with that is that it's much more specific than TENS. TENS is just a whole general kind of shotgun area. It's not curative. It just diffuses your sense of pain. But electricity with acupuncture, you feel a constant kind of jerking like that. The nerve is constantly being. It's like it's being shaken awake. It's saying, "Come on, let's go. Let's get back into the game here and start being acting normal." And it works pretty darn well.
Yes, right back.
How much do you charge for an office visit?
I charge $150 for the first visit, which usually takes longer, and $75 for follow-up visits, but I also never turn anybody away.
Do you use jars?
Charts?
Jars.
Jars.
Cups.
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 Oh yeah, I do cupping. I do that all the time. I teach massage therapists that they should use it in practice. Cupping is another way to manipulate chi.
I thought it was interesting. I'm having physical therapy now. They're using in the physical therapy site.
Cupping is very effective, but it's limited because it doesn't go quite as deep. And so if a person gets a whiplash, what's happening is that you have a trauma, and immediately there's a blood coagulation, and it turns purple. And so what you want to do is take that blood that's stuck in that place, which is causing the pain, and you want to move it to the surface of the skin so it diffuses and goes out to the body, and the pain gets some relief. But if the pain has lingered, then there comes a degeneration of the internal tissues, and acupuncture and other methods work deeply with cupping. But if an initial problem is relatively simple, cupping is very effective.
How did you get your training?
Well, my acupuncture license says that I'm the 503rd acupuncturist in California, and others thousands.
That's an early time for doing that.
Yes, and it was, and so my training occurred before acupuncture was even legal. And I learned a long time ago that you can't always get by in life by following the law.
That's for sure.
Thanks so much for coming to listen and for inviting me here. I'm honored to be joining you. And I'm sitting at this table with esteemed colleagues who bring so many different ideas and thoughts, and hopefully new thoughts, because we all know that there's no single thing that heals. It takes a myriad of approaches and many different, for us to be open to many different ways of healing. And there's no single thing that suits everyone. So you may have heard about cannabis, and especially about CBD, which is it's on the tip of everyone's tongue. And it's one of the, if you will, safe in as much as one doesn't generally feel high from it. So that has been deemed, I think, by the pharmaceutical industry to be a safer avenue. And I'll go a little bit more into that. It is one of over 460 different components that make up the whole plant. And it's probably a great deal more than that, because generally the most important questions are the ones we don't know yet to even ask. So we don't really know all the different parts of the cannabis plant, and we don't know what everything can possibly do to help us. So I'll give you just a little bit of history. In 1973, I was in a car accident and suffered a brain trauma. And in the early 70s, it was deemed that the brain did not regenerate. So if you had a brain trauma or a brain injury, that was pretty much what you would be facing the rest of your life. Very strong pharmaceuticals, which admittedly I took. I had 5 to 5 grand mols a day, was often hospitalized monthly, at least once a month, sometimes more. And the alternative, if you had no family to care for you, was to be institutionalized because it was a brain trauma and related to, or thought to be related to, an incurable disorder. It turns out that the brain does heal, and probably we know more about Mars than we do about the human brain still in the 21st century. It's a mystery. So my husband, my then husband, had read in a medical journal about very early studies in the 70s, early 70s, about 1972, I think. The study was a Tashkent study, that cannabis had been used, cannabis extract had been used in very high doses on mice models with success to treat laboratory-induced seizures. Well, I'm a child of the 60s and I had tried cannabis, but I never thought of it in terms of medicine. Though my parents we had our own gardens, and I grew up with very health-conscious father especially. So not much candy, not French fries. Little French fried fish, but so my friends were a little bit aghast when they came over to my house. They didn't get the normal French fries. So with that, I decided to change my life. I felt like I had no privacy. I couldn't take a shower by myself. Grand mal seizures are debilitating, and I don't have to say in this room, I don't think, but I have to say that We feel pain, we feel illness, and it changes everything in our lives. It changes everything. And other people may tell us what we should do, and everybody will. But, right? Oh, you should do this. You should. But really, you have to be, even if not totally comfortable, it has to feel right to you to even engage. And we want to do so gently, not dive into the deep. Because it's brand new. And so I gently began to add cannabis, marijuana, in a way that I never had before in my life. And I monitored it. I kept a journal, and I has been healthy because, mind you, I was pretty sick. And I smoked it. I smoked at the time, I had a joint, which is a cigarette, in my pocket, and every time I felt a prodroma or an aura, which not everybody feels, but it's an indicator in some epileptics that you're going to have a seizure. So I was fortunate enough to have that indicator. And I would take a few puffs. Well, and it didn't happen immediately, but within 3.5 weeks, I started to I began to see a change in the overall structure or frequency of the seizures. And honestly, I did not believe it because I was seeing very expensive neurologists and taking very expensive and debilitating drugs. And I just, even though I had grown up with a very different awareness, I still didn't believe it because I believed that the medical profession could, should, must have an answer for something that I completely had no understanding of. So I had been a university student. I had been quite a good student, quite successful, working and going to university, and my life changed in a moment. And so I felt that everything else had to change. And what I came to realize, it was a long story, it's 46 years ago that this occurred. I came to realize that it wasn't one thing that could heal. Cannabis could be helpful and was, but it took really a completely different approach to looking at my illness. It doesn't mean everybody has to move to the mountains with no electricity. That's not what I'm saying, right? You don't have to start taking massive doses of cannabis and doing everything in your life differently. But in your mind, looking at the way you're living, the way that you see your illness, that helps. And it's not easy to change. So, right? I mean, it isn't easy for me. And if anybody, I want to lecture on, if anybody in here has an easy way to change, I want to lecture on that. Because it's just not easy for me. I began using cannabis and working with other friends, primarily friends who had cancer and HIV or AIDS at the time. So there was a 20-year span before I started WHAM, and in all honesty, I started WHAM because I got arrested. I wasn't going to go tell the police that I'm growing cannabis and it's great and everybody should take it. I wanted to live my life quietly and rather anonymously. But I got arrested for growing 5 cannabis plants. And we used them for ourselves, and then we shared what we had with others as they needed it. And that began this outward change. WHAM began in 1993. We decided people started calling and saying, "Can you help me?" And we said yes. And so WHAM was built from the needs of people. It's a still, we can't, since legalization, we can't use the term collective, and we are restricted from giving it away, which is what has been our basis. It's always been free, donation-based. And legalization has its benefits, and it also has its drawbacks. There are many reasons why it needed to become legal. But I won't go into that. I want to talk more about how to use cannabis and I feel the necessary questions that you want to ask. Because you can spend an awful lot of money and not get the outcome that you're looking for. And one of the main reasons you won't find an outcome is because single applications don't work. And I think Michael really, you touched on it. When you're, or to touch on it, but the touch of acupuncture speaks specifically to a person and the systems that we're made up of. We're not one system. There's not one thing to go and fix. You can't separate the body from its parts. So you want, if you're using cannabis, you want to know why and how to use it. Because it's not going to kill you. You can't die from an overdose of cannabis. But you could feel uncomfortable if you took too much THC. And there's a myth about CBD, which are the two main things that we hear about, but there are a myriad of components. CBD can make some people feel uncomfortable or woozy or dizzy. So we have found in working with our members that we look at, people don't come, generally speaking, to say, I want to use cannabis because I want an overall sense of well-being. However, we found that that can happen because cannabis does affect the consciousness, awareness, the mind. And that can be useful for some people, and it can be annoying and uncomfortable for others because we're so different. What we do is we look at a bigger picture, the kind of arc of wellness. So mind, body, and consciousness, because no single thing heals everybody, and there's not only one thing to heal. One of the most important pieces as we look at cancers, depression, MS, Parkinson's, sleeplessness, restless leg syndrome, seizure disorders. We work a lot with young people with seizure disorders. We have to look at the many things that are in the environment. So how you live, how much pain are you in? It's certainly very difficult to wake up in pain every single day and to be happy and jolly. It just, they're not really synonymous. But how can we find relief enough that we can bring happiness in, that we can bring the pleasure in life? And remember, sometimes it takes just remembering it because there's not such a small window in our suffering as human beings. Life is not, as we age, there's certainly a lot more pain and the body becomes, the functions of the body become less vigorous, less vital. So we want to encourage it. I could tell you amounts to take, but I would say this: to know what you're attempting to quell, to what it is that you're looking for, what relief do you want to find, and to ask questions, a lot of questions. I think one of the problems with dispensaries, and I'm going to say clearly, I know this to be the fact, is one of the problems with dispensaries is they're selling a product. And it's not a product that works to relieve suffering. It's engaging in awareness of what it is in your body, what hurts. You know if you can't sleep. You know if you have restless leg syndrome. You know these things. And to engage the individual that you're working with, if you do go to a dispensary, ask them many questions. Write them down before you go in, because it can be confusing once you get in there. And if they can't answer the questions for you, please don't buy anything. Don't buy everything. Sometimes you can be talked into a potential relief that you're not going to feel. What we found is working with the acid forms, which are raw forms, so THC-A and CBD-A, not to get too complicated, but to bring those raw forms in. That would be like if you took the plant and made a milkshake of it. If you have a green drink in the morning, I don't know if you do, but if you do and you put it in your blender, or raw carrot juice, and when you cook something, you change its structure. You change and that's why you smoke marijuana and you get high, because THC changes its molecular structure. And so it is absorbed differently in your body. In our bodies, we have a system called the endocannabinoid or endogenous cannabinoid system. And that is where the receptors in your body take in the information and utilize it. It's a lipid, it's fat it has a fat basis. It adheres to fat molecules in your system, so that when you take a raw form, your body responds differently. There's not a great deal of science because most of the science is being focused on CBD, which is what the pharmaceutical industry will be selling you and your insurance companies will be paying for. But I can guarantee you that it is not a single answer or one component of a plant that has over 460 different parts isn't this single answer. So we look more deeply. You can grow your own cannabis. You can juice it. And you very likely would not get high from taking raw cannabis and juicing it. You would find that you may find that it is as effective and helpful as spending your $60 for a small bottle of cannabis. I gotta cut it? Okay. But you can ask me questions and perhaps I can answer them.
Are you familiar with a website called Nootropics Expert? It's said to help heal the brain.
Nootropics, yes. Yeah.
Nootropics.
Yes. I do know about nootropics. So, and have, over the decades, it's been 46 years since I've been working on this brain, and it has gotten older, and I do forget things. And yes, I know nootropics are quite remarkable. And there are many. Here's the thing with reading something and going out and buying it. There are experts, and I've been sitting at this table, that can help guide you to find the answers. Because there's an awful lot on the internet that it puts us in a position to broaden our awareness and increase our intellect. However, wading through what you need specifically can be a journey. In our new site, we'll be reopening on SoCal in Midtown. We're coupling a small dispensary with a greater community center. We're inviting therapists to come in and work with our members, where we can provide one-on-one and more expanded help for our members, because it's important that we know more than what to take, why we're taking it, what's really wrong, why does it hurt.
Question, please.
Yeah.
I'm curious, I have tried some formula for sleep and it didn't work. It was a drop. I can't remember. I think this is THC. So my question is, I've tried a lot of natural things to sleep. None of them work.
Magnesium, you take your magnesium every day.
Well, I haven't done that.
I would bet that if you do, it's going to help you.
But my question is, for the spectrum of all these products, these marijuana products, if I was to keep trying them, do you believe that I'd find one that would help me sleep?
Well, the first thing I always tell people who can't sleep is start with magnesium, because most of us are deficient, and especially as we age, you can't really get it unless you take it. I mean, there are ways, but it's complicated. So it's taking magnesium maybe the first door that you open. And I also suggest, depending on the person, GABA aminobutyric acid, not gabapentin, which probably many people are on, but too many people are on. GABA, G-A-B-A. It can be helpful.
Is it a supplement?
It's neurotransmitter. So you can find, and it may or may not be the perfect thing for you, but by the time you spend all this money trying different cannabis products, start with what may naturally be missing from your body. And we may have deficient endocannabinoid systems, because we have, the endocannabinoid system is massive in the body. It's a system. So it's one of the myriad of systems, many systems. So I would say you start there. B vitamins, reducing stress. Taking B vitamins is it's a great way. It can help us stop that thing in the brain that just doesn't want to be quiet. Sweating, walking, sweating is great. You get tired. Sometimes you just can't stay awake.
Looks like we have a couple more questions out here.
Yes, who's next? Okay. I didn't see. Somebody here?
Oh,
Well,
Okay.
did you say there were CBD candles available?
Candles?
Did you say that? You didn't say that.
Okay.
I thought you said that.
I maybe said cannabis, I don't.
Maybe.
CBD candles. I'm sure there will be. I'm sure somebody's going to make those. They're going to be in the market for $50 a candle. It's crazy. There's so much hype. I'm just, excuse me for saying that, but there is.
It's turned into a business like the
Well,
traditional medicine. Therapy was a buy.
I'm sorry, can you repeat, instead of magnesium, because that's really not working for me, did you say GABA?
GABA, it's gamma amino.
And that's what it would be, okay, GABA.
And
That's what I thought.
you don't take a great deal. It can be very relaxing. There's something called calm, which is you mix it, which you said magnesium isn't working for you. So. Yeah.
So the business that you're either expanding or starting?
Right. Well, Wham's been open for 26 years.
She's on the water.
So, yes.
Okay, so you advise that as well?
Yeah, because-
Where to start?
Right, where to start. And we don't really take this product. We make components, we make remedies, formulas, and then we make the formula for you. Although now they're not allowing us to make formulas. So it's a little bit more complicated, but we're helping people find a way to do that for themselves. So it's
Way in the back.
okay. Well,
Is that the name of your dispensary?
Wham, yeah. I have some cards. I'll put them back there, and there are two. We have a place that we're open right now, and we're in the process of reopening. And in a few months, about 2 or 3 months, we'll be open in SoCal. Yeah, you can call you can call and I'll help.
Okay. One last question in the back.
Actually, not a question, it's an experience that I had with CBD cream that I would like to share with all of you. Last winter, I had a small outbreak of shingles, and those of you in this room that have had shingles know how painful that is.
Can you have that? She has shingles, and it's extremely painful. You want to? Close. Close.
I had a small outbreak of shingles here on my left side last winter, and a friend of mine gave me a jar of CBD cream, and I put it on, and it totally immediately took away the pain immediately. Within 3 days, it was totally calm. So I think this is something to keep in mind and something to keep in your medicine cabinet, the jar of CBD cream.
Very good. We need to move along to keep our schedule, but.
Thank you. Thanks for your time.
I'd like to introduce Mr. Goldberg. Dr. Goldberg is in holistic nutrition. He's a nutritionist, a writer, a researcher. And after he got his BS in food science at Florida State University, Richard Goldberg set up a natural juice bar, the first in the country, at a YMCA. He then started an organic natural food restaurant called the Garden of Life, where he developed one of the first organic vegetarian burgers, called the Waldo Burger. And distributed natural juices, snacks, party mixes, fruit granolas, colleges, catering trucks, and 7-Elevens. He then managed the food service at the San Francisco County Jail and Skyline College while continuing his studies in food nutrition, receiving a master's and a doctorate in holistic nutrition from Clayton College. He has published over 200 articles on the subject of food and nutrition, worked as a nutritional consultant for over 30 years, working with thousands of individuals, helping them to achieve improved health and happiness. 10 years ago, working with autistic kids, Richard Goldberg developed a transdermal magnesium chloride bath crystal, which became the company's remarkable Redwood Remedies. Over the past 30 years, he's been writing and researching the use of magnesium for numerous health purposes and discovered the transdermal, that is through the skin. Magnesium provides incredible benefits. For a short time, he was an assistant professor at Five Branches University, teaching nutrition to acupuncture students. Currently, he works as an additional consultant in health and nutrition, where he's able to provide free consultations on health and nutrition. Richard Goldberg has had the good fortune to have studied with some of the most amazing natural healers on the planet, and we would like to acknowledge them. Michael Tierra, Ann Whitmore, Alan Gabby, Jonathan Wright, Gene Rose, John Christopher, Alfred Fuller, Christopher Hobbs, Ernest Krebs Jr., and many others. Ladies and gentlemen, Dr. Richard Goldberg.
I'd like to address the audience from here. I do have some notes I want to share with everybody. One of the obligations we have as students of natural healers is to not hold the information, but to share it. And I've been blessed to study with some of the most amazing healers on the planet, including Dr. Tierra. And what my role I feel now in life is to share the information I've received and help people in the healing process. As an alternative medicine practitioner, we oftentimes run into conflicts with doctors saying that herbs and vitamins are dangerous and be careful taking them. I want to give you a little bit of a statistic here, which I think should help understand. This is from the Poison Control Center, and what they found was, and this is the 2016-2017 study, that there was not one documented death due to vitamins, herbs, Ayurvedic medicine, Asian medicine, or homeopathic remedies. Not one death anywhere in the country. And to contrast that, let's talk about how many deaths due to prescription drugs. This is according to the American Medical Association. In 1998, 116,000 deaths due to the appropriate use of prescription drugs. Now the number is over 180,000 deaths due to prescription drugs. So when doctors say that vitamins, herbs, minerals, and supplements are dangerous, we need to keep it in perspective that perhaps that's not the whole story. As a nutritionist, I've been blessed to have worked with lots of people with lots of health conditions. And what I've put together as a handout is a little bit of some science, because where we get criticized in the alternative medicine is there's no science to back up what you say. Oftentimes, doctors will tell me, oh, there's no science to omega-3, there's no science to taking vitamins. Well, let's put things in perspective. First of all, we're considered in this country some of the worst health care in the world. And that's a sad statement, considering we spend more for health care than anybody else in the world. And so much of that has to do with the pharmaceutical industry, basically programming the doctors and the scientific medical journals into promoting pharmaceutical drugs rather than alternative natural medicine.
The hospitals are owned by Dignity Health. They own Dignity Health. The pharmaceutical companies own the hospitals.
Right, right. And we're one of the only 2 countries in the world that allow prescription drug advertising on TV, which has increased the profits and the use of prescription drugs by 8,000%. Where is the promotion of natural remedies, of health and herbs and nutrition? We don't get that. And so my role is to help people understand what we can do to improve our health. What supplements, what foods, what diets we can use to feel better. For instance, a lot of items in the brochure that I put together talk about the Mediterranean diet. And the Mediterranean diet talks about how there's a lower risk of dying with the Mediterranean diet. This was a study done in the British Medical Journal in 2018. A lower risk of dying using the Mediterranean diet, which is basically a diet rich in fruits, vegetables, fish, olive oil, low in meat and dairy products, with moderate wine consumption. There was another study. Yes. Quinoa pasta, brown rice pasta, whole grain pastas. Meta-analysis, let me explain real quick. A meta-analysis is a number of different studies examined, so it's not just one study. A meta-analysis of over 12 million subjects reported in the January 2018 issue of the European Journal of Clinical Nutrition found that the Mediterranean diet lowered risk of cardiovascular disease, coronary artery disease, heart attack, cancer, and diabetes. So we do know the diet makes a difference. What we eat affects how we feel. Another article here, and you can read this on your own. I'm just going to zip through real quick. Improved cognitive function with Mediterranean diet. Evidence accumulates in favor of Mediterranean diet for healthy aging, reducing risk of heart attack in women, and continuing on. You'll notice throughout here there's scientific studies referencing all the different items that I talk about in here. So when doctors say there's no studies on taking vitamins, herbs, and nutrients, we can dispense with that fallacy and give you information. I'm going to try and zip through because I know I don't have too much time here, because our lovely chairman here has mentioned that he's taking omega-3, and I'm sure many of you out there may be taking it, maybe not knowing why you're taking it. Somebody just said, hey, why don't you take some omega-3? Let's give you a little science on why we should take it. Greater cognitive flexibility associated with omega-3. Meta-analysis finds association between omega-3 and dry eye improvement. How many people have suffered with a condition like this, and it's reversed literally in 2 to 3 weeks by taking an omega-3 supplement? Omega-3 was found recently, and this is a study in October 2018, may ease anxiety. Now, many of us are experiencing anxiety due to the stress in politics, the stress in life, and to have something safe and natural that can relieve anxiety should be a welcome addition to our program. So this study stated that there was significant relief from anxiety symptoms taking omega-3 at 2,000 milligrams a day. We're not talking about a huge dose here. 1 or 2 capsules twice a day with food worked effectively to relieve the anxiety symptoms. Omega-3 is an anti-inflammatory. Virtually all health conditions that we're dealing with are inflammatory. Heart disease, diabetes, cancer, arthritis are all inflammatory conditions. And reducing inflammation will reduce a lot of the risk factors and potentially reverse these conditions. Omega-3 has been shown to be a very effective, according to this study, one of the most effective anti-inflammatory agents. The other thing that omega-3 is, it's an immune modulator. Let me explain real briefly what that is. When the immune system is overstimulated, we then have a lot of inflammatory cytokines which cascade down to prostaglandins. But basically, it creates issues. Conditions like lupus, rheumatoid arthritis, scleroderma, chronic fatigue, fibromyalgia, colitis. These are all considered what we call autoimmune conditions, when the immune system has gone out of whack and overstimulated itself. Well, omega-3 is an immune modulator. It cools the excitatory activity of the immune system and reduces a lot of the symptoms. Omega-3 is specifically effective for heart disease. A number of different studies indicate it reduces risk of heart attacks and lowers blood pressure. Omega-3 has been used effectively as a natural remedy after a stroke to healing properties. Omega-3 is also very effective to improve blood flow to the brain. Omega-3 lowers CRP, which is a marker for inflammation, C-reactive protein. As we lower inflammation, we reduce risk of many health conditions. Recently, they questioned whether omega-3 was worth taking, and there's really no science to back it up. As I mentioned, all of these studies here are based on scientific studies. It's real easy to falsify a study and make it look like it doesn't work. I'm going to give you a quick example here. And this was done, a pharmaceutical company that makes a drug called Aricept. Goes to Germany, and they want to compare Aricept to ginkgo biloba, an herb we've used extensively for brain function and circulation. What they did was they went to the German university and said, look, we don't want you to phony the research, but this is how we want you to set up. We want you to give people 30 to 60 milligrams of ginkgo once a day for 10 weeks and see if it works for dementia or mental deficiencies. And what they found was ginkgo totally did not work, was worthless. So what you got published in medical journals was ginkgo does not work for cognitive impairment, does not work for dementia, don't waste your money, don't take it. What was not mentioned was there's over 360 scientific studies that validate the use of ginkgo, but they use 240 to 320 milligrams of ginkgo for a longer period of time. So you can make studies look any way you want by changing the dynamics of it, using smaller dosages for shorter periods of time. Unfortunately, the pharmaceutical industry is known for making studies that enhance the use of their drugs and diminish the use of vitamins. 3 years ago, the head of the New England Journal of Medicine resigned in disgrace, saying that the medical journals have become nothing more than advertising rags for the pharmaceutical industry. Against rheumatoid arthritis. Vitamin D is another immune modulator, reduces the excitatory activity of the immune system. I got a lot more to say here, but unfortunately my time is limited. I did want to mention one thing though about arthritis, because that's a condition that virtually everybody can look forward to as we get older, and the options are very limited from the medical profession. In fact, one of the drugs that's promoted for treating arthritis is something called Celebrex. And I just happen to have a list of the side effects of Celebrex just for fun. It's 2 pages long, I'm going to zip through it pretty fast here. Celebrex, and this is from a medical journal article, Celebrex side effects. Diarrhea, indigestion, rash, fluid retention, backache, chronic trouble sleeping, head pain, gas, inflammation of the elbow, knee angina, bleeding, bloody urine, gallstones, heart failure, hiatal hernia, spinning, ringing in the ears, stroke, yellowing of the skin, burping stomach, chest pain, contact dermatitis, drowsiness, dry mouth, dry skin, frequent urination, flu-like symptoms. There's another page. Let me just go to the back here. This is not a complete list of side effects. Others may occur. Okay, so that's Celebrex. Now, let's give you the good news. Chondroitin sulfate was found to be as good as Celebrex for knee arthritis. This is a study published May 31st, 2017, found that chondroitin sulfate, which is sold in health food stores, it's a mucopolysaccharide that we use for arthritis, has been found to be as effective as Celebrex with no side effects. Unfortunately, all the information is not being disseminated to the public, and this is something that I hope I can help share with everybody. Thanks for your attention.
Any questions for Dr. Goldberg? Yes, ma'am.
What do you think of hemp seed oil?
I'm sorry, hemp seed? Hemp seed oil is a wonderful source of omega-3 for people who don't consume fish oil. And omega-3 in any form, being from hemp seed oil, chia seeds, flax oil, is a wonderful natural alternative to fish oil. And I encourage all of us to consume more oils. Our brains are 60% fat. We're basically fatheads. And taking in more good oils enhances brain activity and cognitive function. Not to mention skin conditions. We treat a lot of conditions, eczema, psoriasis, dry skin, cracked skin. By taking more essential fatty acids is a total benefit in treating these conditions.
Is it true, like Larry King promoted the New Zealand, where it's grown specifically,
Oh, you're talking about the krill oil? Okay, so there's a lot of misinformation out there. I'm being gracious. There's a lot of con jobs. And krill oil is one of those con jobs. krill oil is a source of omega-3, but it's not a very concentrated source. You really need to take quite a bit of krill oil to get the same amount you get in another form of omega-3. You're paying a lot more for the krill oil, and to be honest with you, it's the whales that consume the most krill, and taking more krill out of the ocean may not benefit our whales.
We have a question over here.
Yes, hi.
Yes, expiration date on fish oil, and you recommend fish oil over plant-based?
As a vegetarian, I consume plant-based oils. However, the science is predominantly for fish oil, so if you're not a vegetarian, I do recommend fish oil. There is a difference in quality. Fish oil can go rancid. There's a lot of companies that sell crappy fish oil. If you take a fish oil, open it up, and it has an off taste, or don't take it. Fish oil should be a fresh tasting. It will go bad. Expiration dates are guides. Doesn't mean that a product stops working when the expiration date hits. Oftentimes there's 3 to 6 months after the expiration date that a product is still usable. But my philosophy is, when in doubt, throw it out.
Is there
Another question over here.
That's one thing we don't have to worry about. Responsible companies will make sure that there's no toxic chemicals, heavy metals, or lead in their product. They don't want a multi-million-dollar lawsuit because they didn't send it to a lab to test for that.
Right here.
What dose vitamin D do you recommend?
Well, it used to be we only thought 400 IUs was the appropriate amount. And then doctors started saying, well, we can kick it up to maybe 800 or 1,000. And then there were warnings. They said, don't forget, vitamin D is fat soluble and it could cause liver problems. One of my teachers was a doctor that practiced for 45 years, Dr. Cathcart, and I said, Dr. Cathcart, should I be concerned with my patients about higher doses of vitamin D? He said in his 45 years of practice, he has never seen a case of vitamin D overdose, and he's offered his patients up to 50,000 international units a day for a month at a time. So we've apparently seen no problem with larger dosages. I'm now recommending 4,000 to 10,000 for conditions, and larger for some specific areas like autoimmune and skin conditions.
Right here.
I know there are good and not so good and bad supplements.
Exactly.
Do you have a place, a site, where someone can go to find out which supplements are...
Ultimate nutrition. You can't promote it.
Okay, so this should not be a promotion for a business. I've been blessed to work for the owners of a health food store in Felton called Felton Nutrition. And basically my role there is to just help people. I don't have to stock vitamins, I don't have to sell anybody anything. I have an office in the back, I invite people to come and sit down and we talk about health and nutrition and vitamins, and I will make recommendations. I don't work on a commission, there's no vested interest in me promoting a product other than I want to give people good honest information and tell them what their best options are.
So there's not a good
website because
nothing that's reliable.
Right, at this time. Right.
Any other questions?
Well, thanks for your attention. I am available at Felton Nutrition. My card is on the table. Feel free to come in, and I'd be happy to discuss any health condition with anybody.
Tierra, would you like to have some further comments about the woman?
There was supposed to be two people here, one to talk about acupuncture, one to talk about herbal medicine. medicine, which I said, that's a shame because I want to talk about both. So fortunately, the other person who was supposed to talk about acupuncture didn't want to come, so I did do both. So, herbalism, herbs are the first medicine on the planet. The use of herbs literally dates back to Neanderthal. And the Bible, of all places, and I'm not necessarily a Bible trope guy, talks about using herbs for medicines. And and you know, people who are sticklers about the Bible will do all kinds of things and still go out and buy drugs. So I don't know, I mean, you know, herbal medicine is probably one of the most complex systems of healing there is. I would say that, first of all, let's understand that there's two kinds of herbalism, broadly speaking, and I have to differentiate this. One is called allopathic herbalism. Allopathic herbalism, you take St. John's wort for depression. You take hawthorn for the heart.
Can't hear you very well.
Okay. Very good. Gotta eat that. All right. So allopathic herbal medicine versus energetic herbal medicine, which is the way most great herbalists practice it. Allopathic herbal medicine basically is a good way to promote the sales of herbs because people buy it because they think that this herb or that herb is going to treat this condition in me. The truth is that the disease you might have might be unique to you in many ways. For instance, you don't necessarily get arthritis just because you have inflammation in the joint, because what causes you to get inflammation in the joint? It could be your digestion, it could be your weakening of your kidneys, it could be all kinds of different organ systems that are energetically involved in creating that symptom, quote unquote. Now, when a skilled herbalist, and I would say that it's ironic that I was also told to not promote Chinese herbal medicine here because I guess people are suspicious. It happens to be the greatest system of herbal medicine on the planet. I cannot sit here and, because Western herbalism had its roots way back in Grecian times. But it was fractured so many times over the course of history. The first fracture was basically occurred after the death of Christ, when it was said that basically people were not supposed to do anything to help themselves because only faith in God was supposed to work, and therefore, and they believed that the second coming was imminent, so just suffer through it. And so herbal medicine was suppressed within the Christian community at that point. Secondly, it was put into the hands of the priest class in Christianity. Now, what this means at each of these times is that all the wisdom of how to use herbs that goes back to the ancients, where the Chinese never lost their training of wisdom, their wisdom training. The Chinese knowledge of herbs goes back 5,000 years, passed along. But that was the first fracture. The second one was that it was supposed to be the priest. Now, if you can imagine a woman going into childbirth was not supposed to, was considered, they were supposed to suffer because of the original sin. And you weren't supposed to give them any medicine. And so there was a class of women who secretly broke the law to help women to deliver birth. And that was the origin of witches. They were called witches by the church, and they were burned at the stakes. Arguably, probably the greatest Holocaust, greater than anything that we even know in the 20th century, was the death of women who attempted to take care of their children and each other. And of course, it was just survival. So again, the knowledge of herbal medicine was lost. What we have passed along is just, oh, if you take this plant, that's going to help this. And if you take that plant, it's going to help that. But no sense of like, why is it helping? What systems of the body are involved in it? Plants are wonderful. You know, 50% of all drugs that we use are based on plant medicine. And that's a modest 15% today. When I started, it started with marijuana. Our curiosity, herbal medicine was practically completely suppressed in the 1960s. It was forgotten. The last herbal pharmacy in the country was on Ellis Street, Nature's Herbs. And perhaps one of the last voices playing in the wilderness teaching about herbal medicine was a Mormon herbalist named Dr. Raymond Christopher, who was one of my teachers, I'm proud to say. In the people developed infatuations with drugs and with medicines. I see them doing that with alternative medicine also, but that's a good infatuation. But in the 1930s, the dawn of the wonder drugs came about, because the plant medicines and the wisdom was not so great to be able to deal with complex situations as the Chinese were able to do over the course of history. So these wonder drugs, which are specific, isolated ingredient constituents that were taken from plants, concentrated, and like a bomb hit the body. And yeah, they'll get rid of your symptom, but at what cost? That's ultimately what drives people to herbal medicine, because they're looking for something without side effects. That's basically what it is. Before, in the 1930s, before the dawn of antibiotics, one of the most important introductions into Western medicine, the major herb that was working very, very well for infections was Echinacea. By the 1960s, Echinacea was virtually forgotten. People got so enamored with antibiotics. Some of you are old enough to remember how you go to the doctor and everybody gets an antibiotic shot. In third world countries, you're considered underserved if you see the Western doctor and he just holds your arm out. They say, if you don't get a shot, you're not a doctor. You're not helping me. That's how much our infatuation with Western drugs, because antibiotics do work. It took a long time, it took decades for us to realize what's the repercussions of antibiotic abuse. And we're seeing that today. Pardon?
Cancel.
All of it.
Overuse.
Antibiotic abuse is a major factor in the country, and Echinacea was used across the board. Well, when I was just learning herbal medicine, I came across this strange word, Echinacea. It sounded like the weirdest name you could ever imagine for a plant. And I picked it out of Jethro Kloss, in a list of 60 different herbs that he had there. It was good for infections. Well, I was living in the country in a mountain community where infections were rampant. I said, well, God, this herb, whatever it is, must be really powerful because it's got a strange name. That was how much my education was at that point. So I went back to Nathan Potters, the owner of Nature's Herbs. I said, hey, Nathan, what about this herb, Echinacea? He said, oh, that herb. He says, nobody ever asked for that anymore. I'll see if I have some in the bottom of the jar down in the basement. I'll just give it to you. He gave me the last 8 ounces of Echinacea in the country. I don't know how old it was. I took it back. I didn't know anything about how to use it. And I decided, well, the best way to use it would be to pour some vodka over it, make a tincture so I could spread it around with a lot of people instead of just drinking it all over this tea. So I did that. And I said, well, now these infections are pretty bad things that people are getting here. Staph infections all over the body from the country. It's really common. So so it occurred to me that basically the herb probably would not last. 30 drops of Echinacea tincture probably wouldn't last very long in the body, because it doesn't. I ruined everything around why it doesn't, because the liver's job is to basically neutralize anything in the body that looks weird. You know, the liver tries to figure out all kinds of ways to save your life from strange things. And echinacea is a strange thing. It's in terms of how the body recognizes it. It didn't know it. So I said, take 30 drops every 2 hours. And I set up that protocol, not knowing anything. And within 3 days, people's infections, inflammation was gone. And I was curing, people were curing themselves left and right of infections with my limited source of echinacea. I began to teach about that, and echinacea began appearing in the market again. But it was preempted by a company called Madhouse, not a pharmaceutical, well, I guess they are a pharmaceutical company, but they produce natural products in Germany. And it turns out that one of the things the Nazis and the Germans were good about was during the 1930s, they were really into health and herbs and natural healing. And so this guy, Madhouse, came to America in the early 1930s and got echinacea seed and was growing it over there in Germany and using it. However, could you imagine trying to sell echinacea as an alternative to antibiotics? They come down left and right. And so they said, well, they hired some scientists, and they were good scientists, but they all said, oh yeah, it modulates the immune system. Well, maybe Richard knows what that means. As far as I'm concerned, it's double talk for me. It basically, it was a way of them saying, echinacea is good for the common cold. But it's not. It doesn't work very well for colds. But you're going to sell a hell of a lot of it if that's what you sell it for. But you're not going to sell it saying it's good for infections. I didn't know I was going to talk about echinacea. I only got 3 minutes. And there's thousands and thousands of herbs to deal with, and I got more herbs in my head than you can imagine. I don't limit myself to Western herbs, nor Chinese herbs, nor Indian herbs. I call my system herbal medicine planetary herbology. But I use traditional Chinese medical system, energetic system. I don't use herbs only as allopathic substitutes. I use them to balance systems of the body as well as treating balance systems of the body as well as treating symptoms. So I hope with this little teaser for you, it'll get you interested in understanding how to use herbs. Trust them. Third edition is, I'm proud to say, the bestseller at this point. I wrote it in 1980, and almost everybody who's got their IT company herbalist has gotten that book. And so that would be a good place to start. If you're serious and really want to get in really deeply with it, I have a correspondence course called the East-West Course of Complementary Herbology. It's on my website. The website is planetherbs.com. There's a lot of information there about herbs, blogs, and everything. So my wife and I both work with that. So that's how you learn more about herbs.
Okay, other questions?
I have a book.
Way back there.
Yeah.
Do herbs affect the liver and how they detoxify your system?
Do herbs?
Like synthetic drugs?
Do herbs do what?
Affect the liver.
Oh, of course they affect the liver, but in a favorable way. They can affect the liver unfavorably as well. There are all kinds of herbs. I said there's thousands. Some herbs that can injure the liver. Yeah, there's poisons, of course, yeah. The common herbs that most of you know and most of you will be able to purchase are very, very safe. The most you get a headache, you get a little tummy ache, stop taking it, it goes away, and that's basically it. But the common herbs is very safe to take. The most important thing is dosage. If you're seriously trying to cure a problem, don't ever follow the indications on the bottle. Double, triple, quadruple the dose. And take it 3 or 4 times a day. Because as I said, the herbs go through your system really quickly. Start out with a low dose and see how you tolerate it, but then immediately If you're tolerating it, double or triple the dose.
Except if it's THC.
What?
Except if it's THC.
THC is not an herb, it's an extract.
Well,
So extracts are another story. Extracts are further processed.
Who's the best herb for acid reflux?
For what?
Acid reflux. Aloe vera.
That question, what is the best herb, is the question in the category of what allopathic herbalism, right? Did you get that? You understand what I'm saying? It's allopathic herbalism. Now, there is a formula in Ayurveda, which I use a lot, and I have it in my product line. But in Ayurveda, the name of the formula is Abhipatikar. Abhi, A-B-I, P-A-T-T-I, P-A-T-T-I-K-A-R. But if you went to Felton Nutrition and talked to Richard, he probably has my formula, which has Abhipatikar as part of the ingredients in it. Cloves is one of the herbs that would be
Research.
Can I make a statement? I just want to address, Dr. Tierra has a whole line of herbal medicine from under the Complementary herbology. We sell a lot of it in our store. What Michael has done is he's combined what I don't think anybody else really has done out there is Ayurvedic medicine, Western herbology, and Eastern herbology. And this combination of all three has provided products that people get dramatic results with. One that I've had great success with was stone free. A number of people have developed kidney and gallstones, and stone free was one of the only products I've ever used that had success in treating that condition.
Barenfus is an emeritus science professor from Bethany University. He holds a doctorate in veterinary medicine from the University of Pennsylvania. He has held various academic positions at UCLA, UC Santa Cruz, and Parnell College. And he's been helping Scotts Valley Senior Life Association to expand our efforts in helping senior citizens lead healthy and happy lives right here in Scotts Valley. Dr. Barenfus.
Allow my colleague who set the precedent to sit and share with you a few moments. The greatest challenge I have is being the last speaker and being short and to the point. One of my challenges. But I am relieved that I can be a fathead and have as much vitamin D and not become a bonehead. And something for each of my colleagues here. Valerie, in her presentation, you can't see it, but there's a little pillow that just sort of went high on its own. But I guess if there were no ceiling, it would just keep going higher and higher. Thank you for your presentation. And as far as herbs, I have to tell you, my subject placebo effect. When I was a child at the height of the polio epidemic, a few of you might remember, and my mom put together just a little bag that she sewed with a ribbon, and in it were some herbs that she put together. To this day, I don't know, but I never got polio. And so I'm an advocate of alternatives. However, I find myself in the challenging position of representing, as I might say, traditional science and medicine. And if you take a moment on my handout, there are just 2 points I want to make. One, that we don't even realize how magnificent our bodies are designed. If you want to give credit to our Maker, bless our Maker. But we are indeed gloriously made, and I love the phrase, the wisdom of the body. And as you look at those gears, just on metabolism, the chemistry of life, I have to tell you that mechanically, we are nothing like that, but it gives us some beginning of an analogy that there has to be an interconnectedness to all our functions, all our systems, all our organs, and particularly the biochemistry. And so I just inserted below that a map of enzyme reactions, and you can see it can be considered countless. Before I go back to that, I'd like to point out maybe the main part of my presentation is to give you 3 websites at the bottom of reliable sources of information on research having to do with the placebo effect, alternatives. We are looking at a new era where so many years have been spent by the medical establishment. There have been a few remarks here about the medical and pharmaceutical establishment, and much of it has been about doubt and disdain toward some untraditional, whether we say alternative, even complementary, that they come together and function together. But ultimately, you need someone to help guide you. Even integrative medicine, some guidance on how to bring these things together. So it's great to hear we have some people that are strong in their area of recommendations. And yesterday, I received an interesting email that having to do with the wisdom of the body. But looking heavenward, there is a group at the University of Leiden in the Netherlands. Earlier this year, they announced that there are 50 billion free-floating planets in our Milky Way galaxy. Those are planets that are not going around a star like the sun. And that is in addition to the 200 billion stars in our galaxy and many more planets. And if you go beyond, you know, like Carl Sagan, some of you remember, billions and billions and billions, we have no idea what we're part of. And so going back to the enzyme systems and the body, the chemistry of the body is relentlessly and awesome, majestic. And so I want to use that as the very important bottom line. We are fearfully and wonderfully made. So anything that we do to enhance nutritionally, like Hippocrates, we don't want to get in the way. Acupuncture, we don't want to get in the way of the body's natural systems of healing. That was very important in what Hippocrates said about do no harm, physicians. make way for the natural healing process. Now, in a way, the modern scientist who is interested in this world of trying to explain how alternatives use. Let's take the word placebo. What is a placebo? Usually we think of placebos, as I go back in my medical training, it's something that has no real effect. It's inert. And the classic idea of the placebo is a sugar pill. Way back in my practice, this ancient of days, along with the dinosaurs, you know, green sugar pills, pink sugar pills, white sugar pills. And even today, many, many physicians use placebos, nothing short of sugar pills. Or if you talk about an impure placebo, let's say you go to the doctor and you've got a respiratory condition and you get an antibiotic shot. Antibiotics don't work on viruses, but how often people get better. So there are many, many forms of so-called impure placebos. And if I have a little time, maybe the most important factor in the placebo effect, that is somebody getting better, and on the process of healing, just the doctor-patient or healer-patient interchange. That is very important. The difference between whether it is any of our folks here or a physician, somebody that is abrupt, somebody that is insensitive, instead of somebody warm, caring, and really has interest in what you're saying, instead of just, you know, I just think of exchanges with the doctor where he, she might be more interested in entering things on the computer than what you're really saying. So caring and responsiveness, that is part also of a so-called placebo effect. As science has spent so many years doubting and disdaining these kinds of effects, there are medical historians that are now telling us that perhaps the whole history of medicine is one of a placebo effect. Thousands and thousands and thousands of drugs from antiquity that have had benefit, but no understanding of why or how. In my graduate studies, I took pathology in both medical and veterinary school at the University of Pennsylvania. Very interested in disease and disease causation. And one of the most life-changing books was a little book first published in 1932, The Wisdom of the Body. That's why I included that term with my little enzyme chart. And Walter B. Cannon was chairman of the physiology department at the medical school at Harvard. And he coined the term, many of you know, the fight or flight response. Humans and animals have much of our anxiety. We don't even realize how much of our anxiety is stress that we are trying to escape or resist or work against or fight against some kind of challenge. And one of those, needless to say, I should say many of those, disease and pain and all the disturbed function. As a matter of fact, the word inflammation came up, and I had to learn the basics. Rubor, redness, I had to learn the Latin terms. Calor, heat, dolor, pain. These are the cardinal signs of inflammation. Well, inflammation is a response. People say fever. This person or this animal has a temperature. Well, when we say fever, we mean the temperature's out of normal range. And Dr. Cannon did some of the earliest research having to do with what we call homeostasis, the body has a way of trying to bring back into balance when there is something that disturbs that balance. And needless to say, infection is one of them, but stress may be also. Many times, we don't realize where our stress is coming from. But there's no doubt that there are many, many myriads of effects. So he was a pioneer in understanding that the body has certain constant steady states, like body temperature. He was a pioneer in learning about the regulation of sugar, blood sugar, glucose metabolism, which is now so vital to understand diabetes. So as we grow in greater understanding, this is a part of science that we have to appreciate. In their skepticism, they are also trying to continually make new discoveries and try to validate old discoveries or invalidate. So they play a role in society. I'm afraid to say, just like parents and grandparents are not necessarily appreciated for their role. So anyway, Walter Cannon observed many years ago, only by understanding the wisdom of the body shall we attain the mastery of disease and pain, which will enable us to relieve the burden of mankind. Disease is a great, great burden. 2 minutes left, so by golly, here we go. A great classic physician, Greek physician, Galen, many years ago in the Roman Empire, he had 820 placebo remedies. And we don't realize that it's not just empty, inert, but we need the wisdom of our body to also respond favorably. And he had this prophetic insight. He cures most successfully in whom the people have most confidence. It is our role to find, to research, ask questions here. Where did you get your training? What is this certificate on the wall? Where did you learn this or that? Those are questions that people are sometimes intimidated not to ask and inquire. Who is this person? Can you rely? Can you trust this individual that's giving you this recommendation? So real quickly, placebos were used in science in the 60s. The Food and Drug Administration required placebo-controlled studies. That I'm looking at something came in earlier in the month, a randomized, double-blind, placebo-controlled trial to evaluate the efficacy and safety of a drug for Alzheimer's disease. So people are relegated blindly. They don't know what group they're in. The physician doesn't know what group. Double blind into a group that is either receiving the medication or receiving no medication or receiving a placebo. The same pill, but doesn't have the drug. So placebos were a comparison to whether a drug has efficacy. And also, if it has efficacy, it has to be tested for safety. But now science recognizes that the placebo effect is also part of our response to all manner. So you're seeing more and more evidence and research. Whatever has been described here, the body is working with it, or you know when it's not.
I agree with much of what you're saying, but as a veterinarian, how does that apply with animals?
Believe it or not, you can give sugar pills and they get better because the owners changed their attitude. placebo is one doctor at UC Davis said, let's amputate the patient from the owner. Because sometimes the worst things is what the dog or cat is fed, their environment, and so you just take them in the hospital and observe them a few days, and they may get better.
I have to add one thing to this, which is the Bach flower remedies, which are, I think, Bach flower remedies. So homeopathic doses of flower to cure all kinds of
Yes.
things. And it's really very interesting how this was created by this doctor who kind of flipped out on Western medicine way back when. He went in the countryside and started finding all these flowers and giving them for different conditions. And they were working. And to this day, these flowers continue to work.
Yes.
So that the imprint of a person's intention can be transferred over decades.
Yes.
Is my conclusion.
Well, Philadelphia, where I had my primary and graduate education, was a center for homeopathic medicine. And to this day, it's just amazing the results that are gotten from what seems to be just diluted something.
I know.
Very good. Any other questions for Dr. Barenfus? Okay. Oh, yes, go
I
ahead.
just want to applaud you for being able to hear you. Your enthusiasm, I just thought that was fascinating.
Well, thank you, and that's one of the benefits of being more and more deaf as we get older.
Okay. Well, we're going to open things up for the whole panel. We have a few minutes now. We can ask any questions you might like of anybody on the panel or ask them all to comment as you choose. Any questions for that? Yes, ma'am.
I just have a greeting for Dr. Tierra. Not a question, just a greeting.
Greeting. Okay, this is just specifically to you. Oh, wait, do we have any questions for that? Yes, right here.
I have two, actually. One is for anybody, what do you think of the current craze of sugar? And my other question was for Dr. Valerie. Topical applications of
So the question was, what about turmeric and topical, and secondly, what about topical application of cannabis or marijuana? So what do I think about turmeric? Well, personally, I use high-dose turmeric for pain, along with some THC, depending. And I will often, I take turmeric orally, and it's a curcumin that is a pain reliever, anti-inflammatory. CBD is also an anti-inflammatory, and THC is a pain reliever. Now, when I'm speaking about THC or CBD, I'm still talking about it within the context of the whole plant. So what we do is we make extracts. So we use different formulations and different extraction processes because people respond to different extracts in different ways. They're more, depending on the individual, more useful. And so what I mean is by an extract is a really strong, it's the whole plant, but it's taking it in, cooking it down so that you have a stronger application. You can take less of it. Now, when some of it is not cooked, so it's still in the raw form. I think topical applications are remarkable and effective, but it takes a great deal to penetrate the skin and to enter into the bloodstream. So we use coconut oil. I have been told that, and coconut oil is not always good for everyone, because some people have allergies to coconuts. We have other formulations. I have been told, though, that some people can feel THC. So again, one has to be cautious about an application. Individualized applications, even individualized applications of placebos, are really important. And I believe the reason is that it is the relationship both in a personal understanding and in the practitioner, every practitioner. It doesn't mean that you can't go find a formulation, because I've used many of yours and have found them really quite effective. You can, and plants are different than using allopathic medicines. I believe that the future of all medicine, when it can be, enough money can be made off of it, will be individualized applications where we look at a person to see what the whole body, the environment, the internal environment, requires, what's out of balance, and what placebo or other medication, plant application that it may need. So that's, yeah, and I like turmeric a lot.
Other questions from the panel?
You guys hungry?
Okay.
Beautiful food.
Well, let me just take a moment to thank a few people. The team that put on, arranged for today's event, include Maxine McCarthy in the back there. A number of helpers have been helping us put on this event. Tom Fagundes, Diane Cohen, Jeanette Sargent Hamill, Rachel Devereaux, Kevin McCarthy, and Greg Edmondson. We want to thank all of you. Also, if we have some able-bodied people in the room, when we get ready to go, if you would help put chairs away, that would be a big help to everybody. Thank you very much. And so, people we particularly have to thank. And, Maxine is telling me that we have little orange sheets of paper. She's waving them around there. Please make sure that you fill out one of those. Very much appreciate it. And we particularly need to thank this wonderful panel that we had today.